Well, boys and girls at Cole Elementary, another big batch of Book of Excellences for us today. This morning I was overrun by book signers today, so that's a good reason for me to get this video out to everybody. Great job using life skills, and the Book of Excellence is ready to go. So let's see who signed. I'm wearing my hat, my pie hat, this cherry pie hat. My pie shirt looks like Pac-Man because this afternoon, we have our fundraiser incentive event in the gymnasium, and there are going to be people who get pies in the face. Mrs. Early, Mrs. Gardner, and Mrs. Lord have signed up to get pies in the face, and I'll be there, but none of you guys will do a pie in the face for me, so I appreciate that, because so anyway, we'll see. But anyway, let's talk about Book of Excellence signers. So this group of fifth graders right here signed because they know their sight words. And Mrs. Stoll's been working really hard at making sure everyone knows their sight words and checking everything. So every year, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade, we're going to check to make sure you know your sight words. And then Mrs. Stoll will check back with you if you have something you need to work on. But we want to be good readers, and you have to know all your words to be good readers. And so sight words are those things we don't even have to think about. We don't have to sound them out. We don't use our U-fly. We just say them. They're called maybe heart words or star words and U-fly. So Charlie Kennedy, personal best for sight words from Mrs. Stolen, as well as Balin Elkins and Bailey Coleman. Chase Rogers, Samuel Menendez, and Annie Kaiser all signed the Book of Excellence. Hadley Peabody and Noah George signed for knowing their sight words, as well as Desmond Cox, Marjorie Saucito, and Logan McDaniel. It's birthday today for Logan McDaniel. Happy birthday, Logan. And Ethan Nodine. So amazing that we've gotten, this is the first page. We're not done yet. No way, not at all. I have got Oliver Cornell for perseverance from Mrs. Early knows his phone number. It's important we know our phone number. Ross Milner for kindness and for friendship from Mrs. Elam's class. And Henley Hayworth, personal best from Mrs. Elam knows letters and sounds. Addison DeVault for effort, can count to 100 as Paisley Hawkins for effort from Mrs. Elam. Baylor Forth for effort from Mrs. Sheets. And Wade Cokert for kindness from Mrs. Sheets. Lincoln Kessler for Mrs. Ferger for effort, as well as Josie Applebaum from Mrs. Storms for giving good work for her. Stassi Strickler, personal best, perseverance from Mrs. Early, knows her phone number, important to know that. Emma Coleman for integrity from Mrs. Ferger, using the codes of care. I like that. Porter Martin and for courage from Mrs. Ferger during a fire drill. Abby Burnett for effort from Mrs. Tilley. I like that. Tolson Stroud and Clara Gerhardt, all for personal best from Mrs. Tholen. These are sight words. Eleanor Huffer and Shiloh Martin and Lydia Neal all have personal best. Great job. Remy Eberly, courage from Mrs. Burke, as well as Gina Doak. Gina Doak, way to go for effort from Mrs. Burke. I like that. Brewer Stroud for treating people right from Mrs. DeFree, as well as Kendall Downham for doing the right thing. And Alana De Leon for doing the right thing. Porter Fagley for personal best from Mrs. Stolen, as well as Gannon Fisher, Mrs. Storms. Way to go, Gannon, showing some personal best. I know Mrs. Tilley likes that. Kai Oakley for effort from Mrs. Oakley, from Mrs. Storms, as well as Ace Lucas for kindness from Mrs. Uckman in speech, and Addie Pippinger for kindness from Mrs. Uckman. Avery Bachman for personal best from Mrs. Stolen, and Olivia Dutton. Olivia Dutton, I like seeing that up there. Mrs. Storms likes seeing it too for effort, as well as Remy Lord for effort. She can count to 100. Way to go, Remy. Claire Carls for personal best, knows her letters and sounds. Mrs. Elam says. Trey Cooper for effort, and Hudson Foley for kindness from Mrs. Elam. Way to go. Maisley O'Connor for personal best from Mrs. Stolen on her sight words, and Avery Farrell, perseverance from Mrs. Early for knowing her phone number. We got a lot of good kindergarten coming up. 5th grade, 4th grade. Make sure you know how to know your phone number. We got kindergartners who know. Blaine Rentschler, Mrs. Stolen's class for personal best. Sight words, these people. Jace Downham and Zach Horton. Way to go, Jace and Zach from Mrs. Stolen. Charlie Tolliver from Mrs. Reichert. These are all from Mrs. Reichert. Personal best, as well as Cooper Baisden, Luke Hancock, Henry Blackburn, and Chris Jenkins, and Ellie Meyer, and Rowan Guesswine. If Rowan Guesswine's Grandma Donna's out there listening, hello, Grandma Donna. Eva Wilkinson for personal best, as well as Kara Ferger for manners, and Huxley Scott Spears from Mrs. Stolen for personal best. Cooper Rowe, Mrs. DeFreeze says, gives personal best, as well as Eleanor Thomas. Pierce Reichert for effort for patience, knows his phone number. Clark Beckstroth, personal best from Mrs. Stolen, as well as Evan Montgomery for manners. And Tatum Stockdale from kindness. Way to go, Tatum. Mrs. Burke, and Andrew Burnett for kindness as well from Mrs. Burke. So, got the wrong date on here. Let's see. That is it. So, we have 4 pages of Book of Excellence. Phenomenal job. Proud of you, boys and girls. Let's keep working hard. We've got the end of the 9 weeks approaching, and we need to give our best effort starting next 9 weeks to keep going strong. But I like what I'm seeing. I love that the life skills are important, and we're still using them at Cole Elementary. So keep up the good work.